Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Hilliard Macbeth, author of the book When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. He's also a portfolio manager and financial advisor in Edmonton. Welcome back to the show, Hilliard.
Nice to be on the show again.
Is Canada some kind of corrupt place? Internationally, we kind of are starting to look that way. Can you maybe explain?
You know, the real estate obsession is the key factor in that, because real estate, I know we've discussed this before, is sort of the last major loophole in the anti-money laundering legislation that all the countries, including Canada, have agreed to. So it's much more difficult to police real estate than it is things like stock market transactions and moving big bank accounts around. And I think the supervision of the other channels is quite strong. But real estate, for whatever reason, is the last major avenue for moving money around. And so the report that came out today by Transparency International, which is based in Berlin, has 100 chapters worldwide, has identified Canada as one of the major loopholes in the world. There's 4 countries, apparently, according to them, and Canada is one of the 4. The other 3 are the U.S., it is Australia, and the United Kingdom. So London, England, Australia, Canada, and the U.S. And of course, the common denominator between Australia, Canada, and the U.K. is the really expensive housing, especially in cities like Sydney, Australia, and Vancouver, British Columbia, and London, England, of course. Now, there are rules in place, and my feeling that I've expressed before is that all we have to do is apply the rules. But this report suggests that the problems need to be they need to go further, and they actually need to bring in tougher rules. So one of the suggestions they have is that all professionals, including real estate agents, lawyers, notary publics, people like that, I think they mentioned bankers as well, would need to register with the anti-money laundering bureaucracy, and then they would that would be their continued licensing as a professional would be dependent on them reporting these incidents of money laundering, and if they didn't do that, then they would lose their privilege. The big thing is real estate is the major loophole, and the big loophole is numbered companies. So whether it be a Canadian-based numbered company or an offshore numbered company in Panama or Bermuda or Grand Caymans, there's no way to find out who actually owns that company. Usually, when you find a Canadian numbered company that's buying real estate, you'll find it's another numbered company based elsewhere that owns that numbered company. So you have to keep peeling back the layers of the onion, and it's a big job. And my own minor research, which is basically involves talking to a few people in Vancouver, is that they don't even try, because it would be impossible. One real estate agent told me it would be impossible to find out who the real owners of those numbered companies are, and so they don't even bother trying.
You mentioned some pretty incredible numbers about real estate in Vancouver and this numbered company thing. So
46 of the 100 most valuable structures in residential structures in Vancouver, there's no way of knowing who owns them. So almost 50% of them, there's no way of knowing who owns them. And almost a third of them are owned by shell companies. and then a number of them basically have a local, according to this report, they have a local person who's like a figurehead nominee, they call them, listed on title, but obviously they own it on behalf of somebody else. So this would seem like an obvious thing to go after. And the big exemption, and this has been reported a couple of times in the media, is the legal profession. So the legal profession is exempt from the requirement that they have to report. So even they might know who the beneficial owner is, but there's no requirement for them to identify that to the authorities. And that one thing, just requiring that the records be kept of the beneficial owners, they be identified, would change the whole thing right away, overnight. And of course, people would argue that obviously the big impact of it would be the people that are trying to hide the money would move on to another jurisdiction. They would leave Canada and move to another place. So you'd have to have Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States all doing it at the same time, and then it would make it more difficult for them to. But they apparently, according to this report, they find Canada to be one of the easiest ones to launder money through. And my own research, which I'm sure isn't as comprehensive as theirs, is that even the existing rules under FINTRAC would, if they were fully applied, would cover a lot of this, because one of the requirements under FINTRAC is that if you, as a financial advisor like me, if you cannot determine who the beneficial owner is, or if the people are really evasive about who it is, or if the people are really evasive about the source of the money, or what the purpose of the transaction is, any one of those things, any one of those would trigger a requirement that you report the transaction to FINTRAC, and then it's up to them to decide whether they're going to bring in the RCMP or somebody else to research it. But it's something that apparently there aren't that many reports. I don't know if it's fully disclosed publicly as to how many actual real estate transactions in Vancouver have been reported to FINTRAC, but we know that there have been very, very few investigations or prosecutions. So actually, Canada isn't the worst. Under the Transparency International report, the U.S. is worse than Canada. It's got 9 out of 10 deficient. 9 of the 10 important areas out of 10 are deficient, and Australia is the worst. It's 10 out of 10. So Australia, I know, has a tax on foreign buyers, but I guess they're really lax on the actual identification of who these foreign buyers are, which of course is the first step is to make sure you know who they are. And one of the requirements for reporting, for example, is what's called a politically exposed person, so PEP. And those people, whether they were past in the government or presently in the government, or if they have a relative in the government, you're required to report them in every case if they're involved in the transaction. So of course they probably go to great lengths. They would be aware of that, so they would go to great lengths to avoid being named on the title list as to being the owner. But there's all kinds of ways around that. Obviously, there's beneficial owners and nominee owners and numbered companies and all that sort of stuff. So it would be a big job to fully crack down on it. But I think it's important that we do this, because otherwise the illegal money flowing around the world can have really it'll have big positive impacts sometimes in terms of prices, but it also has big negative impacts. And anybody who's trying to buy a house in Vancouver probably would say it's a big negative impact if they push the house prices up to where nobody can afford to buy a house.
We'll have more with Hilliard Macbeth right after this.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard Macbeth. Hilliard, has this article made any estimates on how much money is involved here in Canada?
I don't think that they actually put a number on it, but obviously 46 of the top 100 properties in Vancouver, nobody knows who owns them. There must be I don't know what the average, what do you think the top 100? You're talking billions of dollars, obviously. And if you include Toronto, which is a much bigger real estate market in there, and Montreal, and probably a little bit in Calgary and even Edmonton, probably, you'd be up into huge numbers of dollars. And it's really very attractive if somebody has a problem with the source of the money that they don't want to reveal. It's a very attractive because obviously you buy a property, then you sell it, then you buy another one, and eventually, fairly quickly, there's no way to trace the money. People just say, "Oh no, I got that money from the sale of I made a lot of money in the Vancouver real estate market, and I sold it." And the actual origin of it is very obscured. But I have, I wonder if some of the changes that were brought in the fall with the foreign buyers tax in the summer, and then the CRA making that change that every real estate transaction, residential real estate transaction, now has to file a form of the CRA, whether you're exempt under the personal residence or not. It doesn't matter. You still have to file the form. That's already had the impact of cooling things off, I suspect, and that's one of the reasons why you're seeing Vancouver house prices pretty soft right now. And Seattle, as you probably know, has taken over Vancouver as one of the favorite locations for offshore money coming into real estate. So Vancouver now is in 4th or 5th place, whereas it used to be in 3rd place, behind Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Do you think governments are reluctant to dig very deep because so much money is being made by real estate associations who are big contributors to political campaigns?
I don't know. I think probably it's nobody wants to rock the boat because there's so many people that are making so much money in real estate all across Canada that it isn't just Vancouver. It's one of the biggest industries in Canada, and when you take into consideration all the financing and the legal work and the sales commissions and the appraisal business and all that, it's if you include everything into that, you can get that up into the 12-15% of GDP. The direct investment real estate is about 7% of GDP, but that doesn't include a bunch of the services related to it. So, there'd be a very large number of people that would be against bringing in tougher measures. But I think it's important that we do that, even if it does cost us a few points of GDP for a year or two, because otherwise we completely give up control of our economy and of our real estate market. And that's and politically, I think what will happen is people that are so upset with being not able to find any kind of affordable housing will put pressure on the government to do something, and that's when the government will act. Because even if the people in the authorities were totally on side with this, they'd still be reluctant to take some of these measures, because if people lose money in their personal residences, they generally are not very happy, and often they vote the government out. So it might not be a conspiracy. It might just be nobody wants to be in government when the house price is correct, because generally, almost, I haven't checked every single case, but I suspect most of the time, if not all of the time, when house prices drop, the government incumbent is going to be voted out at the next election. So they're very reluctant to cause people to lose money on their homes. But that's basically would be one of the side effects of bringing in a tougher approach. What they say about Canada in this report is that the FINTRAC is the sole supervisory body for compliance, and they take a risk-based approach to supervision, which means basically they ignore a bunch of it. They just try and focus on the highest risk stuff. But it says here in the report, the enforcement of the rules in Canada in the real estate sector is still limited. So they're admitting that the rules exist, but they're saying that they're not really applied very aggressively. So that's all that would be required. And I suspect too is that they don't have the people. Obviously, they need to hire more people, and then what investigator wouldn't like to go to some overseas place and start going through the corporate documents to find out who the real owner is. But that's probably not in the budget of the. So some of these authorities have very limited budgets, and that would be very difficult to get that amount of money approved for an investigation. But that's what it would take.
Well, it's the old-fashioned, you can have the toughest laws in the world, but if you don't have the cops to enforce them, those laws mean nothing.
Exactly, and I think you think about the RCMP, they're probably busy with a lot of things, and they're really the only police force that the FINTRAC people can refer these cases to. So I think, what they're saying is that it's only the most outrageous cases that they actually bother pursuing, and they just ignore all the rest of it. But until they start making it, part of it maybe is reputation too. If you have it's like what Napoleon said after he shot one of his generals. They asked him, "Why did you shoot one of your generals?" And Napoleon answered, "Well, to send a message to the other generals." Right? In French, it was pour encourager les autres. And but that's what we need. We need to make a couple of examples of some high-profile cases, and that'll send a chill over the whole area. And that should be. I think there's lots of opportunities to do that in Vancouver and Toronto. It's a little bit different in Toronto. I think Toronto, the money's coming from Russia or different places like that. But certainly there's opportunities there as well. These stories about people buying 20 or 30 condos at once, that's not normal business behavior, I don't think, anyway.
We'll have more with Hilliard Macbeth right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Hilliard Macbeth. Hilliard, Canada in the top 4 of money laundering nations. What good would Canada, being a small nation, what good would their actions be if the big boys, the U.S. and the U.K., don't play along with the same game? You have President Trump saying he wants to deregulate everything, not crack down on it.
Yeah, President Trump would almost be the dream of a money launderer, because he's developed lots of condominium towers all over the world, including in Vancouver. And his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, said at an interview a couple of years ago that Russian oligarchs was one of their best customers for buying condos in their towers. So obviously he didn't think there was anything wrong with that. So certainly that's exactly what would happen, is what you're saying, is if we implemented stronger laws and enforced the existing laws, that the money would just move elsewhere. There's no doubt. And probably the U.S. would be the likely one if they didn't do the same thing. But it still, in my opinion, would be worth doing, and it'd have a really nice side effect, is that house prices would become more reasonable again, and we could try to work our way out of this bind that we're in with this housing bubble. I know that I've said in the past that I didn't think there was any way of getting out of this bubble without a hard landing, and that means a pretty serious correction of 40% or more in house prices, especially in Vancouver and Toronto. But if anything could be done to choke off the bubble before it gets any worse, and the sooner we get working on working our way through this correction, whether it be a soft landing or a hard landing, the better everybody will be. And this would be a big part of it, getting it started, I think. And also it has, what'll probably happen is it'll become a political football, and somebody will run for office based on being a champion of closing down the loopholes. And, a lot of times, of course, people run for office on that basis, and then when they get into government, they kind of lose their enthusiasm for actually doing it. But and I wouldn't be surprised to see that in the near future, that becomes a major political issue, especially in Vancouver.
Hilliard, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Nice to be on your show again.
My guest has been Hilliard Macbeth, author of the book When the Bubble Burst, Surviving the Canadian Real Estate Crash. He's also a portfolio manager and advisor for investors in Edmonton. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. If you have questions for the show, you can email us at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.